What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods coming back at y'all with another episode of our NFL Draft Corner. We're moving back out west to look at what the 49ers might do in the draft. And of course, as I told y'all, man, I'm the college football guy. I don't have much NFL knowledge, so we brought on an expert, man, Matt Kaimer from the Nuggets of Gold 49ers Media Podcast, man. Y'all make sure to go check them out on YouTube and on all podcast streaming platforms. And of course, Matt is the co-founder of Undrafted Sports. We made the big announcement last episode from the worst take to Undrafted Sports. So, man, make sure to go check out Undrafted Sports as well. But, Matt, I appreciate you joining me today, man.
Just want to say, how's it going, everybody? Really excited to be on talking some NFL draft and just talking 49ers overall. Also, if you don't know about Undrafted Sports, Zach is in the network as well. We're basically just like an up-and-coming podcast network, more like a sports media network. But if you ever have interest in writing or podcasting or just being a part of the network, make sure to reach out to the Undrafted Sports account on Twitter. And I think it's at Undrafted Media. But excited to talk football today because we obviously, the big deal is that at number 3, who the 49ers will be selecting to be their future quarterback, but even when we move on from that, like, there's not many holes on this team, so it's gonna be super exciting to see what they do in the draft because they can go so many ways after that 3rd pick.
Right. I mean, so I want to start with last season, though, man. It was a 6-10 season, injuries. I mean, I've honestly I've never seen a team have more injuries than this team at one time. I mean, it was just like I would turn on the game, I would have Sunday ticket. I was like, who's even playing for the 49ers at this point? Everyone's on the sideline hurt. What were your thoughts on the 2020 season as a whole?
So, I'm gonna go back just real quick to the 2019 season just to kinda set expectations because I'm a massive 49ers fan. I live in Central California, so it's about a 3-4 hour drive up the coast. I went to every playoff game in 2019, and so I was all in. I was super excited. I've been waiting for like the Kyle Shanahan breakout year, and that was 2019. So 2019 offseason hits, pretty much retain all of the key pieces besides DeForest Buckner and Emmanuel Sanders, and it's like, all right, 2020 is going to be that. Like the whole thing was, oh, it's going to be the revenge tour. Well, 2020 hits. Week 2, MetLife Stadium pretty much ends the season there as you see like 4 guys go down. Jimmy gets an ankle injury. Nick Bosa tears his knee. Solomon Thomas tears his knee on the next play. Or maybe Solomon Thomas was the play before, but just knee injury after ankle injury, like it's constant, right? And then throughout the season, you see that a lot. The defense on the 2020 season was spectacular. And I think that's really a sign for what's to come just with having Nick Bosa back because Fred Warner turned himself into an absolute force. If he's not the best inside backer in the league, then he's at least in the discussion now. And there's like those top end guys, and he's very clearly one of those guys. We saw the secondary look a lot better after Richard Sherman went down. Kind of odd, but you saw Jason Verrett kind of have a resurgence in his career because he's also been the guy that's been injured so much, which is kind of ironic because the 2020 season was so full of injuries. And then Jason Verrett is pretty much the only guy that's like an everyday starter in the secondary. But you saw a lot of injuries, and then that kind of led to I would say it's a disappointing year, but one that's not disappointing in terms of production, but just like all 49er fans kind of like, yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? Everyone got hurt. And so it's just kind of one of those years, but definitely a really unfortunate season just with all of the expectations that not only I had, but the entire fan base as well.
Right. And so we're getting into 2021 now. We're wrapping up free agency, man, almost to the draft. How would you grade the 49ers free agency this year?
I don't know how I would put it on a letter grade, like because they didn't have much to work with. I mean, I guess you could give them an A because like what I wanted them to do, they checked all the boxes, and it was never going to be some crazy splash for agency or anything like that. But they basically went out and retained almost all of their free agents. They lost Kendrick Bourne. Now Kendrick Bourne made $7 million a year. Props to him, but there was no way the 49ers were ever going to pay Kendrick Bourne that money. Like it's just kind of how it is. But that's okay. Like it's all right to lose a couple of guys like that. That happens all the time. I mean, we see a lot of really good organizations kind of like live off of that. The Baltimore Ravens are notorious for being able to turn comp picks into new starters every year. So that's totally fine to do. But you look at kind of what they did. They bring Jason Verrett back. They bring Emmanuel Mosley back. They bring K'Wan Williams back. They bring Kwaski Tart back. So they bring pretty much all their guys in the secondary back. The front 7 is kind of like already under contract for the most part. They ended up bringing DJ Jones back, who's a one-tech defensive tackle, kind of a nose tackle guy who's really underrated. Like a lot of just underrating. Oh, this is really important. Bring that guy back. And then on offense, they brought back Kyle Juszczyk and Trent Williams, which were the two guys I really wanted to see them get back. Trent Williams makes that offensive line just totally different. And I've actually floated some scenarios where it's like, okay, if the 49ers end up taking a running back early, how good can their rushing offense be? Because they were able to retain Trent Williams. So now they have Trent Williams, Mike McGlinchey, also able to retain Kyle Juszczyk, and then they also have George Kittle. So their ability to steal the edge is probably the best in the league, I would say. And maybe I'm a little bit biased on that, but like those athletes on the outside with Kyle Shanahan designing the run schemes is something that's going to be really fun to watch for the next couple of years. But I was pretty happy. I guess I give them an A or maybe like a B plus, just because they didn't do anything like some crazy move like, oh my god, they traded for this guy or anything like that. But it was pretty much mostly underrated signings. The only guy that's like that was really important they brought like from out of San Francisco was Samson Ebukam, who I was thinking he was more of a bendy edge guy. Not at all. He's a very, very strong player that initiates contact and pretty much throws the tight end or tackle whoever's on him. Just a really high motor player. Also a fantastic special teams player. So they stole him from the Rams, so I really like that move. That was pretty much the only move where they went like they decided to not re-sign a guy. So it was pretty mellow. And then of course you saw them trade up to the 3 pick after that. So they kind of were like all quiet before the storm, I guess. But overall, I think it was a very smart season and pretty like I don't know what to call it. Like it just wasn't very like splashy. And it was just really like, all right, we're gonna be careful. We're gonna be pretty like conservative in this free agency. And I thought they did a good job of doing that. And I think that was the right move as well.
Right. And so, I mean, we get to the draft now, man. And the number one question I have, I mean, it's all this first part, of course, has to be about number three. But first, before we get to we know it's going to be a quarterback. Before we get to that, did you like trading up from 12 and just kind of giving the Dolphins your whole future for the third quarterback in the draft? Or would you have rather them stayed at 12? Like, what was your opinion on the trade as a whole?
So I was actually on a plane when the trade happened. So I get off the plane, right? And I have like 50 texts that are all like, "What do you think about the trade? What do you think about the trade?" And some of them are Dolphins fans, like, "Oh, yo, we fleeced you, man!" And like everyone's just talking, like everyone's getting pretty excited, and everyone's like either sending me stuff like, "Oh, who do you think they're gonna take?" and like a bunch of questions. Also, some people talking a little bit of shit about the trade, which was super funny. But you kind of look at it and you go, "Oh, wow!" Like they traded 3 first-round picks to move to 3, and an additional third. I love it. I think this is like what we've seen teams do that have been successful. We've seen the Rams just consistently trade their first round picks. Why are they able to do that? Because they hit on day 2 and they hit on day 3 picks. The 49ers also received 3 comp picks this last year for losing Robert Sala and Martin Mayhew. I couldn't think of his name. I'm sorry. Martin Mayhew was a front office guy and he went to the Washington football team. So they end up receiving 3 third round comps for them. So you kind of look at it like, oh, they mortgaged their future, but I don't know if it's really that. Like the way I see it is, okay, you lost a third rounder and a first rounder this year. Well, you didn't even lose your first rounder. You moved up. You basically lost 1 third rounder, even though you gained a third rounder this offseason for this draft. And then you got an additional 2 third rounders in the future and you lost your 2 first rounders. So I don't know if it's as much as like mortgaging the future as people put it out to be. They still have full draft classes besides the first rounder for these next 2 years. You can always like navigate through the draft. And if you really need to move up for a guy, if there has to be a guy, there's always a way to do it. I think we've seen that. Now, maybe if you're like the Houston Texans and you literally have like nothing for 2 years, like that's a little bit different. But if you're just losing your first rounders, I think it makes sense. On the Dolphins side, I love what the Dolphins did because they hopped to 12 and then they hop back to 6 to get that elite player. This is one of those moves that kind of makes me wonder what the Eagles are doing because they're in the perfect spot to get that elite player and they kind of trade back. Like there's definitely times where it's weird to trade back. Dolphins move, I will say I applaud them for doing that. I think it was a stellar move on their end. But for the 49ers, definitely had to give up a lot, but they were also like had to outbid the Panthers, the Broncos, and maybe some other teams that were in that mix as well. So I understand the compensation. It might be a lot. And at first, when you just see it, wow, three first round picks, it looks like a ton to move up 9 spots. But think about how good this quarterback class can be. And think about how these, like, two of these guys at number 3 could translate into Kyle's system. I think it's a spectacular move. It's a bold move. It's a really like, hey, we're going all in. We're going to take a quarterback. We're going in with this veteran roster, which kind of brings you back to free agency of why they were so careful in free agency, just bringing all their guys back. They want to bring a rookie quarterback in. I think they're going to end up trading Jimmy, and I do think that Justin Fields will eventually be the pick at number 3. But what are your thoughts on just the
Ooh.
quarterback? I just got to hear.
I mean, so for me, I'm a Dolphins fan. So at first, I was just ecstatic because I was like, you know what, I'll take it. Like we didn't need to pick at 3. I think the player we like, it, I think they're going to go either Chase or Pitts, and if something crazy happens, like the Falcons take Pitts and the Bengals end up taking Chase, which could happen in all actuality because the Bengals are playing this completely wrong in my opinion. And what we end up with Devontae Smith at 6, who's a Heisman winner wide receiver, whose teammate is our quarterback now. That's fine. So I'm fine with them trading back. But in terms of quarterback, the only thing that I would say is, man, Kyle Shanahan must be very, very confident he knows what the Jets are going to do it too. He has to know they're going Zach Wilson. And I just the only thing that scares me about it, man, is all the rumors. I don't know if it's a smokescreen. I don't know if someone knows something I don't know. This whole talk about Mac Jones being the guy for Kyle Shanahan, that makes me nauseous to think you gave up 3 first rounders and a third rounder for Mac Jones when in all actuality, Mac Jones probably would have been there at 12 in the first place. And I hate the Mac Jones talk, but I think if they get Fields at 3, I think they got the second best quarterback in the draft potentially at 3. And that's the thing I don't get is all this Justin Fields talk. I mean, it is blasphemous some of the stuff that they're talking about Justin Fields with a lack of work ethic, with a lack of heart and all this stuff. It's like this is a dude who played in the Natty with broken ribs and threw for 6 touchdowns against Clemson, came into Ohio State. What I think happened is they talked to some Georgia insiders when he was at Georgia, and that's the narrative that they were pushing. But in all actuality, he left Georgia because they went with Jake Fromm, and there was a racist incident where he got called a derogatory slur by a baseball player, and it was a whole issue there. So there was a lot of outside factors pushing him away from Georgia, and I just think they got bad information. And I think Justin Fields has one of the highest upsides of the draft, and if Kyle Shanahan gets him, and like we talked about in your podcast, if you can trade back into the first round with the Jimmy G trade, I think the 49ers are going to be sitting real pretty at it going into 2021.
So I really like what you're saying about Fields, just because you brought up the Georgia transfer, and I'll say this even. Georgia messed up by allowing him to transfer. That was a big
Yep.
miss on their end. Like, I think everyone can realize that they're not the program that they were a couple years ago. Jake Fromm didn't work out exactly how they were hoping to after that national championship. But Justin Fields, I think one of the biggest traits that stands out with him, and this is if you watch specific games, but it's toughness for sure. Because in some games he'll have to wait in the pocket a lot longer than other quarterbacks are asked to do, and that kind of we'll get into his progressions and everything like that as well. But he's asked to sit in the pocket and just get drilled, and we see that happen. Then he makes a lot of plays, like extends plays, running past line of scrimmage, where he has to go head on head with linebackers, safety, stuff like that. And so he'll take some blows. I do hope that we don't see that as much in the NFL, and I would expect that not to be seen as much in the NFL. I think the game kind of not slows down, but like gets a little bit softer for quarterbacks in the NFL past the line of scrimmage. And we've seen all the penalties that happens if if you come in and you drill a quarterback. But I think his toughness is very, very obvious. His just natural toughness, where he sits in the pocket, he waits, he knows he needs to wait, half a second longer for his receiver to start his break. Receiver starts his break, he lets it rip, and he just gets drilled by an edge guy or a blitzing linebacker. And that happens consistently on film where he's not afraid to wait and take that hit. Not every quarterback can do that. And not every NFL quarterback can do that either. We see a lot of guys struggle. A lot of young guys struggle with that as well. So that's the first thing I want to talk about him, because that whole narrative of like, oh, he's not tough, he's not he doesn't love football and stuff like that. I don't know why we see that. Like, you can obviously tell that he loves the sport on film. Like, you can definitely see that. Then I want to get into a couple of the negative things just because I think it's important to address them. The two things that I think are the biggest issue with his game are, or I guess the biggest question marks moving forward would be going through his progressions in a timely manner, not because he can't do it, but because he wasn't asked to do it at Ohio State. Their offense is full of wide receiver options where he has to wait a lot longer to see the play develop. And also, think about it, he's spread out every time. So he has to read the whole field. And so he gets a lot of criticism for that. Moving into Kyle's offense, you turn your back to the defense. A lot of the time in that play action stuff, you turn, you do a boot, you roll out, whatever it is, and you set up and you basically have to read half the field, and it's almost a 1, 2, 3 quick read. It's going to be so much simpler for him, not in terms of speed, but in terms of what he's asked to do from a progression standpoint. So I think that will look a lot different in the NFL. Definitely a question mark moving in the Kyle's system, but it's a lot easier to do it within Kyle's system. So I think that's something worth talking about. The other trait that I just kind of don't see as well with him as some of the other guys is his pocket presence. Also, the play action based system kind of removes the pocket in a lot of instances. It doesn't mean that he's not going to have to learn how to do that, but I don't think it's as bad as people put out to be. I definitely think that's my biggest question mark in terms of him. Like, how does he feel the pocket? The good thing is, even if he misses out on the pocket sometimes and misses a guy, the guy will just hit him and bounce off on the college level. So that definitely helped a lot, just because he's such a big dude. But that's something else where I think that will kind of help. He'll get helped out with being in Kyle's system.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. And the thing I like about him in Kyle's system is his accuracy and ball placement is elite. I mean, once he figures out where he's going with the ball, he puts it in the perfect spot. His decision making is perfect almost. I mean, only 18 turnover worthy plays in 2 years at Ohio State. And you mentioned that pocket presence. It also helps when you run a 4-4. If you don't have that pocket presence and you have to escape and you can get me 15 yards because you can outrun the middle linebacker, that's amazing. And he's a winner, man. And that's the thing that I don't get about, even the Trevor Lawrence criticism right now, which is outrageous in my opinion, that we're criticizing Trevor Lawrence's like will to win when he's lost 2 games his whole life. I mean, Justin Fields only lost 2 games at Ohio State. So he has a winning pedigree. And I think one thing too, you mentioned the reading coverages. I agree that is a con that I saw too. The other thing is blitz recognition. In the Northwestern game, and especially late in the Indiana game, and even some against Clemson in 2019, he just didn't see some of the blitzes coming. Like the way Brent Venables schemed his blitzes, Justin Fields did not pick him up. He was not pointing out the right guy. He missed a lot of blitzes, but I think in Kyle Shanahan's system, I think with the offensive line, you mentioned McGlinchey, you mentioned Trent Williams. I don't know if that's going to be as big of a problem. And, George Kittle can also block. Let's say, you have to bring him in to pick up someone who's dominating. You have options. And, I mean, you look at the running back position. I know you released an episode about Najee Harris being an option for the 49ers. He can pass block. That's a big dude at the running back position. And I don't know how Mostert is at blocking either. I know he's not as big as Najee Harris, but I'm sure he's capable. But I look at him, and the high-end comparison for me for Justin Fields is a prime Cam Newton. I think he has that ability to be that kind of dynamic quarterback, that kind of franchise quarterback when like the 2013 to like 16 Cam Newton before he got hurt. And I don't think Justin Fields has the injury history that Cam Newton also had at times. So I think and I would just like to know if they end up going with Mac Jones, if the rumors happen to be true, what does that mean for you? What do you think it means as like, I guess, a franchise? Like, would you be happy, or would you just be like, man, we are going to suck?
No, I'm a big Justin Fields guy. I'm also a big Trey Lance guy. I love Trey Lance as well. Love the upside that he brings if he goes to a good organization, which I believe the 49ers are. So I love those 2 picks. Mac Jones would absolutely shock me. I know all the rumors are out there. I know I've read them and stuff. Also, just a quick note. Did anybody know the Niners were going to trade up to 3? Because I didn't see any rumors on that. But apparently all the rumors now are true. It's really interesting how that works out around draft season. And I feel like we always forget all of the fake rumors, but every year there is so many just bogus rumors out there. You brought up the Bengals earlier. I completely think that the Jamar Chase stuff is a total rumor. Like, I think that they're locked in on taking Penny Sewell if he's there at 5. But moving on from that, like, just like another note of example of that. But we see all this stuff of, oh, they're going to take this guy. So we're recording on Monday. I don't know when you're posting this, but I believe Trey Lance's pro day, it might be on right now. I think it's either today or tomorrow. I promise you, you're going to see the betting odds go up for Trey Lance. We're going to see everyone go, oh, the Niners are going to take Trey Lance. It's going to get all big. And then it's going to die down. And then I think what's going to happen is right before the draft, everyone's going to recollect themselves after, deciding Mac Jones is the pick. Oh, Justin Fields is the pick. Oh, no, Trey Lance is the pick. And I think a couple days before the draft, we're going to all kind of realize and go, it doesn't really make much sense if Justin Fields isn't the pick. Like, this is the obvious selection in this case. What I will say is, you brought up the Jets. Maybe that's why it's being floated around a whole bunch, because they don't want the Jets to change their mind and take Justin Fields at 2, because it does seem like it's almost a lock right now that Wilson goes 2. But if Fields went 2, I think that would totally screw up the Niners' plans. But if they took Jones, I mean, I'll be in some type of live stream when it happens. You'll see it immediate, I don't know, not embarrassment, but I will be so upset and it won't even be like mad. I'll just be like, this is the most just like, oh, we're going to go for the high floor move, which is not the winning mentality. The safe picks in the draft, they don't seem to work out very well. And especially at quarterback, I feel like you look back a couple years where it's like, and of course there's the Mitchell draft where, oh, Mitchell, he's going to be a solid player. And it's like, dude, that doesn't make any sense. Like, let's take the guys who have the better traits. Like, let's just do it on that. And the Mac Jones stuff, I don't try to come at him. I think he's a solid prospect. I think for a lot of teams, it makes sense. I think for the 49ers at 12, that could have made sense. But you don't trade up to the 3rd pick to pass up on Justin Fields and Trey Lance for Mac Jones. That would be terrible. I would be so upset. And I still think Mac Jones would do all right. But but he's not going to become one of those guys, like what one of those guys could become with Kyle Shanahan's system. So it's a big no for me.
Right. I mean, I agree. Last year I was in your position because I was screaming that the Dolphins should take Justin Herbert over Tua. Of course they didn't. And I remember we were live streaming the draft and I was just upset the rest of the night. And I understand why they did it, because I mean, no one was as high on Justin Herbert no one knew he was going to be what he was. But man, so after pick 3, the 49ers do have picks in each of the next, and they got like 3 5th-rounders or something like that too. Who are some late round prospects that are on your radar that you're like, man, if we can get him in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, we're gonna be in business?
So the guy that's been kind of blowing up the biggest on 49ers media is definitely Elijah Molden, corner from, I think it's Washington. He's kind of a slot corner safety guy. I think he's probably the guy that's been hyped up the most. Probably, I think most people would expect him to go at 43. And I bring up the rumors and stuff like, oh, these rumors don't make any sense. These aren't really rumors. These are people just kind of speculating, hey, this guy should be on the board at 43. He fits what the 49ers want to do. They only have one guy. I think they have one guy under contract in the secondary after this year. So you're going to see them take a lot of secondary players, I think, in this draft, or at least try to get a couple quality guys. Another thing that you can be sure that the 49ers will do is they will draft an edge defender or a defensive lineman or both, like a defensive tackle. Or both in this draft in some capacity. So they might take a guy in the 2nd round that they're like, hey, this is a new speed edge guy. This guy's eventually going to take D Ford's spot. Because D Ford is coming back. I don't know how. I thought he was going to retire, but he is coming back. So we'll see something like that. In terms of on the offensive side of the ball, the 2 spots where I really want them to take a guy is either guard or like a guard that can be the future center after Alex Mack retires. And then another thing that you will 100% see them take is at least a couple receivers. I think they'll probably take 2 or 3, which seems like a lot, but I don't think they're going to I think those will be day 3 picks. A couple of guys I saw, one of the guys I saw was Shai Smith, who could be like a late round guy, went to South Carolina. And if you don't know, the Niners love picking South Carolina guys for whatever reason it is. They have both Deebo Samuel and Javon Kinlaw on their roster. So potentially maybe him late in the draft. There's so many names though, where like at receiver, whoever they take should be on everyone. If you're a fantasy player, should be on everyone's fantasy player, because the ability that Kyle Shanahan has to develop these late round receivers, just because he's like, hey, I like this guy has this trait, let's develop it. He's going to be really good. He's going to play this specific role. That kind of stuff he is so good at doing. So I think what you might see is some some speed guys, some vertical threat, especially if they take Justin Fields, where they want to make the offense more vertical rather than horizontal. And you'll see them take some slot receiver, some like faster guy to kind of be out there to spread the field. And it might be not like a guy that doesn't have a big name or people don't really know about. You should pay attention to that guy because if Kyle really likes a guy, there's a reason for it. And we've seen him swing and miss on a couple later round picks at receiver. But we also saw him hit on Kendrick Bourne as an undrafted free agent, and that guy just signed I think it was a 3-year deal where he made $7 million every single year, $7 million AAV.
Yeah.
So any of these guys that they take late in the drafts, like make sure to watch out for them. One other guy that I think they might take is I think his first name is Jameen. His last name's Sherwood. He's kind of he's a safety, but then he comes in and plays like money backer on third down. And what the 49ers are kind of doing with their Sam linebacker spot is they're kind of converting it to almost a safety position. So it's basically a guy that's going to be out there on base downs, but he's out there because he can cover maybe a little bit better than a linebacker, and he's almost used as like a blitzer. Sounds like Jamal Adams on the Seahawks, but but they are looking into kind of developing some guy like that. So Sherwood was the guy that they had met with, and I think he could potentially be a fit there to kind of play that Sam linebacker role. But also there could be a couple other guys. So if you see some bigger safety get selected, might not be playing safety, might be playing backer, which will be really cool to see how that unfolds, just to kind of see how they utilize that position, because that's something that's kind of getting new in the NFL, where it's like, hey, these linebackers and safeties are kind of almost becoming like the same guy or very close to, with like very similar responsibilities. So going to be really interesting to see if they take a guy like that, if they like make a day 3 guy their day 1 starter because of the specific role that he will have. So that's something I'm really interested in. But overall, definitely going to see them take wide receiver. Quarterback's going to be the pick at 3, of course. I think either round 2 or round 3, you're going to see them take some secondary piece. And then I think it's going to be, you might see them take a running back. I've talked about, who is it? Michael Carter potentially being a fit. We also talked about Javonte Williams, but he doesn't really fit into the offense like I think some people think he does. But Michael Carter maybe gets taken. Now, I don't know how early they're willing to take a running back just because they need the secondary pieces. And, there's so many ways they can go in the draft. But I think that overall it's going to be on the offensive side, you're going to see them take some interior offensive linemen, a wide receiver, maybe a running back, maybe a tackle or some project player like that. And then on defense, you're going to see them, I think, take defensive line, I guess you'd call him like a sub linebacker. I don't know. He's a Sam linebacker, though, guy converting from safety, and then just secondary pieces all around. And within the secondary, pieces like Elijah Molden, who are versatile players that can kind of play multiple positions, because those guys aren't going to be asked to start day 1 in the secondary. But next year, they will definitely be expected to start moving forward. So that's kind of where I see them going in this later parts of the draft.
Right. And I mean, so let's say they have a perfect draft and they go and get Justin Fields, a quarterback. They get that secondary piece. They pick up a speedy slot guy. They get that offensive line issue solved. We had our first episode was the Seahawks, and let's say Sam was very excited. He's like, man, the NFC West is ours this year. What are your expectations for the 49ers in 2021?
So I got to start this with just trashing the Seahawks real quick. I don't know how Seahawks fans believe that. Okay, the 49ers might have a rookie quarterback, but their roster's stacked. If they're healthy, they have a much better roster than the Seahawks. And with that said, there's another team in the division that's probably, like, I think the Niners are probably the second team in the division as it stands right now. Now, you had Justin Fields. I think that in the future, they're going to be a lot better. But the Rams are absolutely stacked. I don't think people understand how good of a player Matthew Stafford is. I think they're the top dog in the division right now, and I think they have earned that. I think the Niners are probably slated in that second spot, like a wild card spot, which is weird to say because we just saw them very, very dominant in 2019. But doesn't mean you can't make the wild card and have your rookie quarterback get hot and then make a run. I know that we had never seen a rookie quarterback win the Super Bowl, but that's going to be the expectations in San Francisco moving forward. They take Justin Fields, maybe not this year, but 2022, the expectations will be winning a Super Bowl. Like that's just how it's going to be. And for Justin, I think for the expectations for this year, in my opinion, it's if you're taking Justin Fields, he's your guy. You start him day 1, and you make the playoffs. That is a massive win for the franchise. That shows this guy is here to stay. You just made the playoffs with him as a rookie. Now, I think they can make some magic happen in the playoffs. I absolutely think they can make a deep run, and I think that they could, make a Super Bowl run. They're that caliber of a team, especially because the NFC isn't that great outside of the Buccaneers And, you bring up the Packers. Well, when the Niners have been in full force, they have decimated the Packers when those two teams have played. So the Packers just don't really match up well against them. And then you bring up the Rams. The Niners have won the last 4 matchups against the Rams. Now it's going to be way different, like I said, because Stafford's there. But it's hard to not think that they're not in the conversation of being a contender if Fields looks good, at least like mid-season, if he's looking really good and he starts to, hum in this offense, because that's going to be the biggest question, I think, with him. And then, of course, health, because we've seen that was not the case last year. But the Cardinals and the Seahawks, I think they are quite a bit behind what the Rams and the Niners are doing right now, just because those rosters are so good. The star players on those two teams are just they play such key positions, and they elevate everyone around them so well. Where, not to say that Russell Wilson doesn't do something like that, but they're kind of like what they want, like what the Seahawks want to do at their core is run the football a lot. And their team isn't designed to do that. Like how their philosophy wins, they're not really designed to do that. So, and also on the Seahawks side, like they did address the pass rushing and the defensive line a little bit, but I just find it hard to like go into the year expecting either the Seahawks or the Cardinals to truly compete with the Niners or the Rams for that one spot, just because the Niners and the Rams, I think those are 2 of the top 4 NFC teams just in terms of talent and coaching. So I think that the expectations are you make the playoffs, hopefully you win a playoff game, but I definitely think this team is fully capable to contend and be in the Super Bowl mix, even with a rookie quarterback, because I don't know why everyone just goes, "Oh, it's a rookie quarterback." Like, we're not going to talk about a Super Bowl. Like, screw that. Go win the Super Bowl with your rookie year, then think of all the hype that you'll get after that. So, I also think that Justin Fields is absolutely a guy that's going to be almost like not a plug and play, but he's going to be NFL ready in terms of, hey, he's played against top competition. Will it take him a while to adapt to Kyle's system? Of course. It's going to take any quarterback a while to adapt to it. It took Matt Ryan a long time to adapt to it, where he said like the first year he was so uncomfortable, and then that second year was when he really started to figure out, won an MVP. So you make the playoffs with a rookie quarterback in 2021, I will be very happy, even if they get knocked out in the first round. But I think the expectations should be playoffs, and I think those expectations absolutely should be met.
No, man, I love it. I think the NFC West is going to be, it's just going to be like a war out west, man. But especially with how good the Rams are going to be. I was waiting for you to say that because I don't feel like anyone's talking about how good the Rams are going to be. But I think Stafford is that good of a quarterback. I think he's so underrated as a player. But man, where can our listeners find you? Social media, your podcast, the undrafted sports, everything. Where can they find you? And where can they follow you?
So my ad's on the screen right here for Twitter. Also, I have Nuggets of Gold, 49ers Media on YouTube. I also have a Padres podcast as well. If anyone's that's listening is a Padres fan, which is probably far-fetched on this show, just talking college football and NFL draft. But I am a Padres fan, so it's a very exciting time right now for me and just in my sports life. Obviously, we just launched Undrafted Sports, which is really awesome. And basically, if anyone kind of wants some information on that, it's pretty much just a sports media platform where we have a whole bunch of people that bring their own shows over, and we try to elevate each other's show and kind of grow the reach as a whole. Also, if you're ever interested in writing or podcasting or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me or the Undrafted. It's at Undrafted Media on Twitter. But yeah, it's been really fun. So I'm excited for just sports in general because the Padres are looking pretty good. Maybe not the best start of the year, but they have a really good group, and baseball's a marathon, so it doesn't really matter how you look at certain stages of the season until it's playoff time. But super fun on the baseball side. Also talking a lot of NFL football. Don't just talk about it there. Have a couple podcasts getting started up, but not quite ready to kind of announce those yet. But for the 49ers, Nuggets of Gold is where I'm at, and I try to post daily content. I know it's Monday today where we're recording this. I know I have an episode coming out about the 2 UNC running backs, kind of talking about how they fit in Kyle's system. And then throughout the week, we're going to be talking about draft needs, kind of what we're talking about a little bit today, but draft needs, where we should capitalize. And then, of course, responding to the Trey Lance Pro Day, which, don't get me wrong, I'm going to love the Trey Lance hype. I'm a huge fan of Trey Lance. And I say that word fan specifically because I really want this guy to succeed. I think he has all the tools. I also say that understanding that he is playing a lot lower level competition where his team is dominating. So it's going to be tough for him to figure it out at the NFL level and adjust to that NFL speed. But if he gets the coaching, I fully think that he has all of the traits to be able to do that. But that's where I'm at, man. And I want to say thanks again for letting me come on the show. It's super fun talking 49ers football. Always down to do it. Always down to talk NFL draft and whatnot. So really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. But guys, make sure to go follow Matt. Make sure to go subscribe and follow Nuggets of Gold. But guys, y'all know where to find us, man. YouTube, all podcast streaming platforms. Like I said, information about our 100 subscriber giveaway is going to be found on our NFL Draft live stream. Y'all crush that 100 subscriber mark, man. We are almost to 120 now, man. So I told y'all I'll announce the 200 subscriber giveaway soon. So make sure y'all go ahead and subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and make sure to go follow Matt. But for myself, the Blue Bloods, Matt, Undrafted Sports, and everything else, man, we are out.